Module is about where to find the person you're looking for, how to put yourself out there. And when you're operating from the best version of yourself, you are open to exploring and trying new things. Just like a kid exploring life. You're just like, "Oh, okay, let me try this, let me do this, let me play with this. Which one of it works?" You're not worried about getting rejected. You're not worried about failure because you know that Allah has the person written for you, and there's multiple channels of how that could happen, and you're willing to try it. And you're coming at it from a place of a very growth mindset place of whatever I try, I'm doing this to observe myself and help myself grow. So, as an example, one of the most common places that people meet their person is on the apps or in person too, but I'm going to talk about the apps for a second. Most of my clients I got married from the apps because I pressured them to go on it. But what I'm trying to say is at first we see the apps as really cringy and like I don't want to go on it and it's terrible and apps have a very or when I say apps I'm saying like marriage apps like not Salem's Muzmatch, the one that's not Israeli affiliated or whatever platforms are out there. They have a bad reputation because people who don't have the right perspective have been on it and they don't use it correctly. And when you don't use it correctly, you're going to have negative perspectives on it and you're going to feel very bitter about it. However, I love the apps because it's a very easy way to meet people without trying to guess like who's single and who's not. I meant like if you're trying to meet people in person, it's kind of hard to do that. But if you're like, you have a busy life, you have everything, and it's kind of hard to like meet people, apps is the best way to go there because everyone on there is kind of looking for marriage. Obviously, there's bad apples on there that's not your people, but what you're doing is if apps trigger you, it's not about the actual app, it's about what you tell yourself on the apps that makes it feel triggering. So, as an example, if someone goes on the apps and they tell me I'm so exhausted from being on the apps, what's usually happening is that every time they scroll and they see someone they don't like, they make it mean that there's no one on here for me. That means I'm wasting my time. That means I'm never going to get married. And that thought process keeps coming up for them, which makes it feel very exhausting, which makes them feel like, oh my God, it's a lot of pressure. It's very heavy. However, when you come at it on the apps from a place of a growth mindset, what I mean by this is I'm going to open the apps, I'm going to see what triggers me, and I'm going to work on that because I want to become someone that sees the apps as more of an option that I can see, that I can use as a tool that I can use to meet people instead of a tool that I use against myself. And so, people who are operating from the best version of them, they see things from a very growth mindset. So I remember I used to do this. I had a very strong ick towards the apps, but then I was like, you know what? It's too hard to meet people. Let me just go on the apps. So I would go on there and I would notice all the triggers that would come up. Let's say someone matches with me and they text me and then they ghost me, and then I'd work on my trigger of being ghosted, and then I'd felt so confident in that. And then my next thing was, oh, I'm talking to someone and oh, I'm not liking it. I feel like I need to say no, but I was afraid of rejecting them, so I'd have to work on that. So it feels very clean. So I worked on that, and then with time, I built so much confidence because yes, obviously every person I'm talking to, it's with the intention of marriage. But when things didn't work out, I felt so much more confident in who I'm being, how I carry myself, the way I talk, the way I act, when in every single situation. So I felt a lot more confident. And the more confident I felt, the more my avoidant side started fading away because I wasn't avoiding myself anymore. I wasn't avoiding my own emotions. Because avoidant people usually avoid their emotions. And same thing with anxiety, but it's a different story. Um, anyway, what I was saying is I went on the apps, right? And I would just keep, scrolling. I would like kind of alter my profile a little bit, like what I say on there to see what kind of matches I get. So I would see it as a game of like, ooh, like what's happening, more of an experiment, not a game, sorry. An experiment of what kind of matches I get. And I would just keep, scrolling and matching and then talking and then doing all this, right? So the more my goal, again, the purpose is I'm trying to talk to as many like I'm trying to find my husband. So every time I meet someone that's a match for me, I'm just like, okay, this feels like a match. Let me like talk on the phone with them really quick, and I would have a conversation or two, and I could tell immediately if they were not my person. And in the beginning, I was not very good at it, but with time, I got very good at it. And that was a skill that gave me a lot of confidence to be able to show up so much better, to learn how to communicate, to learn what I like, what I don't like, all of this. Because again, especially as Muslims, we don't know these things. We just think, oh, get married to the first person ever and you'll be perfectly fine. And I hope you do. I hope, inshallah, like it would be nice if you got married to the first person you meet. But typically, that's not how it goes in reality. People usually meet a lot more before they get married because there's a lot more lessons they need to learn before they become the person that actually is a match for their husband or their spouse. And so, um, I was saying, you, the more you try, you go on the apps from the place of I just want to see if my husband's on here. You're looking for the needle in the haystack. You don't care about the ones who are not your person. So the how to meet someone is on your profile. You're gonna write a profile that is literally the best version of you. Like when I say that, I'm saying like this is what I'm looking for. These are my values, and I'm looking for someone who has these values. And you put pictures that are real of you, like not too much like fakeness. Like don't be catfishing people either. Like the more real you are, the more you'll weed out the ones who don't want you, and you'll weed in the ones that do want, or bring in the people that do want you. And I remember showing up to like potential meetings with like someone I matched with, and I would just like dress up in the most like very average like normal day version of me. I don't put on makeup. I just want to like just bare everything. Like I'm not trying to impress anyone because I just want to see do they like the real version of me or not. I'm not trying to play games here. I just want to see do they like the real version of me because that way they we can like finish this up much quicker. Because the goal is to see is he my spouse or not? And I know I keep repeating that, but I'm trying to get really reach this into my your subconscious minds, all of you, is like you're just trying to see if you're trying to make your profile as like real and authentic as possible so that the person that you're imagining, the person that you're thinking of, would they find your profile attractive? Would they see your profile and think, "Ooh, I'm looking for a wife like this. Like, I wanted a wife who has the values of, she lives her life in a very, oh, it's so interesting. She does this in her free time and she does that in her free time and she does this, she does that. She has a life. Oh, and this is her natural self. You can see like naturally. You want to imagine that, right? But you're not writing your profile in a way that's like, how do I attract the most men? Or the most women, that's not the goal. It's more about you're thinking of your one person and what would they be looking for that and what would you be looking for. And this goes back to the values video I talked about. You're focusing on values. This is what I value, this is what I'm looking for, and you write it in a way that, in your own words, ask people for advice about how to look at your profile, see if this is really reflects you or not, and get feedback from there. Okay, so that's for apps. Another another way to meet people is putting yourself in environments where you create a network. And usually this is the masjid, usually this is you know, clubs or things that, you value, and or places to volunteer at or whatever, right? So if you want someone who values the deen, where do you think they're spending their time at? They're probably spending their time at the masjid, whatever, whatever. But it's not like you're going to meet them directly at the masjid. That's not the point. Because again, you don't interact in masjids. The opposite genders don't interact in masjids. But you're creating a network of people who know you, who knows you, who could know your potential husband, who could potentially connect you. And um, you're not doing that for the sake of getting married, but you're putting yourself out there more from a place of I'm creating a network so that I can fulfill one of my wants and values, which is friendships and community and having a community. And Allah could send me my husband through this community in some way or the other, but you're showing up as your best self and you're just, interacting with people and you're getting to know people. And a story on this. First of all, I this is how I met my husband. It wasn't intentional. I was on the apps, but I also volunteer at the masjid because your girl's living her best self. And I was, just showing up to classes and stuff. And, one thing led to another, and a sheikh like referred me to him, and I met him through the masjid while we were volunteering there. And so it kind of worked out through that. I didn't know it wasn't my intention. I was like, whatever. I just prayed to Allah, like, send me my husband however you want. And so I was doing my part of putting myself out there on the apps, but also I was doing my part of meeting my needs in terms of community and serving. But also a side story, what I was saying, when I show up to the masjid and I see other women who are looking, who are single and are active in the masjid and they're volunteering, they're serving. Me as a married woman, I take mental note of like, oh, this woman is really dedicated, and I'm gonna look out for her. Like I'm gonna look out, like she's really invested in her into serving, and she's like really this, she's really that, and I'm gonna keep her in mind. And yeah, so that woman, the woman that I'm referring to, she met her husband through that way because not me necessarily, but a friend of a friend like connected her with someone. What I'm trying to say though, my main point is when you show up and doing like living your values, showing up your best self, people notice it. People will keep you in mind. People will keep you in mind and they'll refer you to someone that they know that is also looking, that they think they would be a match. Now, that doesn't mean every time you're gonna find someone who's like, they refer you and they're like it's a good match. Sometimes they don't know what they don't match you with the best options. But that's not the point. The point is more of like you're putting yourself out there, you're trying, and you're serving because you're serving God and you're living your values. And if someone happens to refer you, alhamdulillah, if they don't, you take ownership and you of how you want to meet people and you can find different ways. And me personally, I don't like waiting around for people to refer me to meet people. I like to take things in my own hands and just kind of, go on the apps and meet people right away because the way my husband shows up is not necessarily I'm not going to know how he shows up. That's not really my business. So there's plenty of people. There are plenty of good people on the app, plenty of good people in the masjid, plenty of good people everywhere. And you want to show up in a way that wherever you think the person's values, like if you're someone who really values community service, are you someone who's in spaces where you volunteer? And yeah, so you're just continuing to do that. Another note I wanted to mention, um, if you're someone who depends on referrals or like friends of friends to refer you to someone, people take note of who they want to help and who they don't want to help. So, as an example, if I see a girl coming to me saying, "I'm so desperate, like there's no men out there for me and no one wants to help me and all of this and like can you just help me please find a husband?" I am not going to help her. Do you know why? If you can guess why. Because the way she's showing up right now, her I cannot testify on her behalf. I cannot see that she is someone that's ready for marriage because she's in this very like hopeless, nothing matter, like no one's helping me. I'm so desperate in this and like she's not owning this part of her. Like she has to take responsibility and bring herself to a point where it feels like I want to recommend her for marriage. I am not going to waste my time recommending her to marriage if her attitude is like this already to someone. Like I'm just trying to show you how people think, okay? So if you're someone who's constantly asking like to like hey, find me someone for marriage, but you're asking in a very desperate way, subconsciously the human mind takes note of that. And I notice for people that I see at the masjid who are very like invested in their deen, take their deen seriously, show up for classes, very like focused. I'm very like I take note of that. I take mental note of that, of like, oh, this is definitely an option I'm going to recommend to the next good person that I meet, like a good man that I think would be a good match for her, because I see her as like a really good option. Now, what could come up is, well, how come you get to decide and whatever, right? Like, why don't you just help everyone? It's like, I'm not saying this is me. I actually don't matchmake that much. I'm saying this is how people think. This is how, like, if you're asking someone for help, um, this might come off very like, uh, um, not good, but if you're asking people for help, do you do they see it as like, oh, okay, like, am I gonna be embarrassed if I recommend this person? Or do I think this person is worth recommending? That's how humans work. And so that's kind of a side note on that, just on the community building and network building. And I remember most of my client, like a couple of my clients actually, one of them, she was networking at the masjid, and we worked on just completely letting go of like being desperate about marriage and only focusing on building friendships. So she showed up doing that, and she showed up talking to a friend that she like at the masjid that she really connected with, and she went over her house and she was laughing, she's being really funny and being her best self. And that friend turned out she had a cousin who was single who was looking for marriage, and that's how they connected, and now they're happily married, alhamdulillah. But she wasn't like tell me like I need to know, I need to get married and stuff like that. I'm this is harder to kind of talk about, but there's such a distinction between, you can see when someone's like living a life not attached to marriage when versus someone who is. And as someone who is married, or someone who is, kind of help other people who help people get married, you can tell when someone's not ready for marriage. Because if they're kind of sulking in their self-pity and depression, and they're like, I just need to get married, that's not a good way to get married. And so it just helps to talk about that. So, um, yeah, okay. So there's that. How to meet people is you put yourself out there, and putting yourself out there is not easy. Putting yourself out there requires a lot of courage, requires a lot of self-acceptance, and courage of potentially being rejected, and learning how to be rejected and learning how to get back up. But that is the process of figuring out how to get to the spouse you're looking for, inshallah. And every time you're putting yourself out there, you're always making the intention, Ya Allah, help me find the spouse I'm looking for. And I'm learning, allow me to learn and to grow with every step I take. And this is how you navigate that process.